The morning sun cast long shadows through the old barn's weathered boards as I traced my fingers along the wall, searching for the marks my grandfather had described in his final letter. My name is Emily Chen, and I was about to discover that sometimes the most valuable inheritances aren't listed in any will. Still wasting time in this dusty old barn? Sarah's voice cut through the quiet morning air. My mother-in-law stood in the doorway, her designer outfit hilariously out of place among the rustic farm equipment. You should be packing. This property belongs to me now. I kept my face carefully neutral, continuing my examination of the barn's western wall. Good morning, Sarah. I'll be finished here soon enough. It had been 3 weeks since my grandfather's funeral, since the reading of the will that had turned my world upside down. Grandpa Chen had raised me after my parents died, teaching me everything about the farm that had been in our family for 3 generations. Everyone expected him to leave the property to me. Everyone except Sarah, apparently. The day of the will reading still played vividly in my mind. The family gathered in lawyer Marcus Thompson's office, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. My husband David sat beside me, his hand squeezing mine supportively. Sarah perched on the edge of her chair like a vulture waiting to swoop. The last will and testament of James Chen, Marcus began, adjusting his glasses. To my beloved granddaughter Emily, I leave my personal effects and the sum of $10,000. I felt David stiffen beside me. That couldn't be right. The remainder of my estate, including the farm property at 1247 Willow Creek Road, I leave to my daughter-in-law, Sarah Chen, with the condition that she maintain the property's agricultural status for a minimum of 1 year. Sarah's triumphant smile made my stomach turn. The farm had been everything to Grandpa. He would never have given it to someone who saw it as nothing but a future real estate development. There must be some mistake, David protested, but Marcus shook his head. The will is quite clear and properly executed. I'm sorry. That night, alone in my childhood bedroom, I found the letter. Hidden inside Grandpa's old leather-bound copy of The Art of War, his favorite book, was an envelope with my name written in his shaky handwriting. My dearest Emily, it began. If you're reading this, then everything has gone according to plan. Sarah's greed is as predictable as the seasons, and sometimes the best way to expose a snake is to let it strike first. In the old barn on the western wall, you'll find 3 notches carved into the support beam beside the horse stalls. What you discover there will help you understand. But remember, timing is everything. Your loving grandfather. Now 3 weeks later, my fingers finally found what I'd been searching for, 3 small notches, barely visible in the aged wood. Sarah was still watching from the doorway, her impatience growing. The property assessor is coming this afternoon, she announced. We need to discuss your departure date. This sentimental attachment to a worthless piece of land is becoming tiresome. Worthless. If only she knew. I pressed against the notched beam, feeling something give way with a soft click. Behind me, Sarah's heels clicked on the wooden floor as she turned to leave. Be out by the end of the week, Emily. David may be my son, but business is business. I waited until she was gone before pulling the hidden panel open. There, in a space no bigger than a shoebox, sat my grandfather's old safe. My hands trembled as I input the combination my birthday, just as he'd always used for everything important. The safe's contents would change everything, but Grandpa was right. Timing was everything. And Sarah had just given me the perfect opportunity. Inside the safe, I found a stack of documents that made my heart race. Land surveys, mineral rights assessments, agricultural studies, and most importantly, a decades-old contract that Sarah would soon wish she'd known about. But there was something else, a USB drive with a post-it note attached, the real inheritance. My laptop was in my car and my hands shook as I retrieved it. The video file on the drive loaded, and suddenly there was Grandpa sitting in his favorite armchair looking directly at me through the screen. Emily, my dear, he began, his eyes twinkling with that familiar mischievous glint. If you're watching this, then Sarah has taken the bait, just as I knew she would. But before I explain everything, you need to understand why I did things this way. I settled onto a hay bale, my grandfather's voice washing over me as he began to tell the story that would unravel Sarah's plans completely. It started 5 years ago, he continued, when Sarah first approached me about selling the farm. She had big plans, she said. Condominiums, shopping centers, a better use for the land than simple farming. What she didn't know was that I'd already discovered something that made this land far more valuable than any shopping center. My breath caught as he outlined the truth. The geological surveys, the mineral deposits, the water rights that Sarah knew nothing about. But more importantly, he revealed the hidden legal framework he'd carefully constructed over the past 5 years. The "will she's so proud of winning," he chuckled, is just the first thread. Pull it and you'll unravel the whole sweater. A noise outside the barn made me quickly close the laptop. Through the dusty window, I could see the property assessor's car pulling up the driveway. Sarah was already rushing out to meet him, her face arranged in its most charming smile. I slipped the documents into my bag, carefully replaced the hidden panel and took a deep breath. The next few days would require careful planning and perfect timing. Sarah thought she'd won everything, but Grandpa had taught me well. Sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war. David was waiting for me at home, worry etched on his face. "Mom's getting more insistent about us moving out," he said as I walked in. "She's talking about development plans already." I set my bag down carefully. "I found something today," I said. "But before I show you, I need to know, are you with me on this? Really with me? Because what happens next might change your relationship with your mother forever." He took my hands in his expression serious. "Emily, you're my wife and that farm means everything to you. Of course I'm with you. What did you find?" As I showed him the documents and played Grandpa's video, David's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to determination. By the time we finished, he was already reaching for his phone. "I'm calling Marcus," he said. "He needs to see this." "Not yet," I said, placing my hand over his. Grandpa was right about timing. Sarah's brought in a property assessor today. Let's see what he finds first. The next few days were a careful dance of preparation and patience. I watched as Sarah paraded potential developers through the property, making grand promises about future developments. Each time she passed me packing boxes in the house, her smug smile grew wider. Linda, the local cafe owner and longtime family friend, stopped by with coffee and concern. "Emily, honey, is it true? Sarah's talking all over town about turning the farm into some kind of luxury complex." I accepted the coffee with a grateful smile. "Don't worry, Linda. Things aren't always what they seem. Your grandfather," she hesitated. "He never would have wanted this." "No," I agreed, "he wouldn't." And he didn't. A week passed. Sarah's property assessor completed his survey, and she called a family meeting to discuss the future of the property. The perfect opportunity was about to present itself. As I packed the last box of photos in my childhood bedroom, I came across one that made me pause. Grandpa and me standing in front of the barn on my 16th birthday. He was teaching me about crop rotation that day, but more importantly, he was teaching me about patience, strategy, and the importance of knowing when to hold your cards and when to play them. "Just you wait, Sarah," I whispered to myself. "Just you wait." The family gathered in the farmhouse's dining room, the same place where we'd celebrated countless holidays and family milestones. Now Sarah sat at the head of the table, my grandfather's place, surrounded by development plans and property assessments. "I've called this meeting," Sarah announced, "to discuss the future of the Chen property. As the legal owner, I've decided it's time to move forward with improvements." I sat quietly beside David, watching her lay out glossy renderings of proposed luxury condominiums and retail spaces. Linda had spread the word about the meeting and several longtime neighbors had shown up, concern evident on their faces. "The property assessor's report confirms what I've always known," Sarah continued, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "This land is worth far more as a development opportunity than as a failing farm." "Failing?" Old Mr. Johnson, our nearest neighbor, bristled. "James Chen's farm has been one of the most productive in the county for decades." Sarah waved her hand dismissively. "The numbers tell a different story. But don't worry, my plans will increase everyone's property values. Emily, since you're still here, you might as well hear this too. The developers want to begin preliminary work next month, so we'll need the house and barn cleared by then." "Perfect." She'd walked right into it. "Actually," I said, standing up and retrieving my own folder of documents, "I have something to add to this discussion." Sarah's smile turned brittle. "This meeting is about moving forward, Emily. Your sentimental attachments to the property are no longer relevant." "Oh, this isn't about sentiment," I replied, laying out my own documents. This is about law, contracts, and my grandfather's true legacy. The room grew silent as I pulled out the first document, the original mineral rights survey. 5 years ago, Grandpa commissioned a geological survey of the property. Would you like to know what they found? I didn't wait for Sarah's response. Significant deposits of rare earth minerals, essential for manufacturing electronics. Minerals that are becoming increasingly valuable in today's tech-driven world. Sarah's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. That's irrelevant. The property and everything on or under it belongs to me now. That's where you're wrong, I said, pulling out the next document. You see, 3 years ago, Grandpa legally separated the mineral rights from the surface property rights. He then placed those mineral rights in a trust. I paused, savoring the moment. A trust in my name. The room erupted in murmurs. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. That's impossible. The will dash. The will gave you the surface rights to the farm, I confirmed. But it also included a condition, maintaining the property's agricultural status for 1 year. A condition you've already violated by bringing in developers before the year is up. David stood beside me, adding his own voice. Mom, did you even read the full contract before making your development plans? I laid out the final document, the property contract with its carefully worded clause. If the agricultural status is violated within the first year, the surface rights revert to the holder of the mineral rights. That would be me. Sarah's face had turned an interesting shade of red. You planned this, she sputtered. You and that old man dash. Actually, Marcus Thompson said from the doorway, making everyone turn. Our lawyer had arrived right on schedule. James Chen planned this. Quite brilliantly, I might add. I have the paperwork right here to transfer the surface rights back to Emily as per the contract's terms. The next hour was chaos. Sarah raged, threatened lawsuits, accused everyone of conspiracy. But the documents were ironclad, each one legally filed and witnessed. My grandfather had spent years setting up this elaborate failsafe, knowing Sarah's greed would be her undoing. There's more, I announced once Sarah had run out of threats. I pulled out my laptop and played the video, letting everyone hear Grandpa's explanation in his own words. Sarah, his recorded voice rang clear, if you're hearing this, then your greed has revealed itself. I knew you'd never respect the land, never understand what we built here. This farm isn't just about profit, it's about legacy, community, and doing things right. Sarah stormed out before the video finished, but the damage was done. The neighbors who'd gathered were already spreading the word. By sunset, the whole town would know how Sarah's scheme had backfired. In the aftermath, things changed quickly. The developers disappeared, their grand plans evaporating once the truth about the property's ownership emerged. David stood by me through it all, even as his relationship with his mother grew strained. You know what amazes me? He said one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Grandpa knew. He knew exactly how she'd react, knew she'd try to develop the land immediately. He turned her own greed into the trigger for his trap. I nodded, thinking about the other contents of the SAFE journals detailing sustainable farming practices, plans for modernizing the farm's operations, ideas for working with local schools to teach children about agriculture. The real inheritance wasn't just the land or the minerals beneath it, it was a vision for the future. 1 year later, the farm was thriving. We'd used some of the mineral rights revenue to implement Grandpa's modernization plans, making the farm more efficient while maintaining its traditional character. Local schools regularly brought students for educational programs, and our organic produce had developed a devoted following at farmers' markets across the county. Sarah eventually moved away, unable to face her humiliation in the community. David maintained minimal contact, sending holiday cards and occasional updates. It was painful for him, but as he said, sometimes you have to choose between what's right and what's easy. Linda stopped by often, usually with coffee and local gossip. Your grandfather would be so proud, she said one morning, watching as a school bus full of children arrived for a farm tour. He always said you were the one who truly understood what this place means. I thought about that as I walked through the fields that evening, seeing the land as Grandpa had taught me to see it, not as a commodity to be exploited, but as a legacy to be preserved and improved for future generations. The hidden safe in the barn remained our secret, still containing one final envelope I hadn't opened yet. The label read, "For Emily when you're ready to expand." Another piece of Grandpa's long-term vision, waiting for the right moment. That night, as David and I sat in the dining room, the same room where everything had changed a year ago, I finally felt ready to open that last envelope. Inside was a detailed plan for acquiring neighboring properties that were at risk of being developed, along with strategies for creating a community land trust to protect local farmland for future generations. "Your grandfather," David said, reading over my shoulder. "He wasn't just thinking about saving this farm, was he? He was thinking about saving all of it. He used to tell me that good farming is about planning for seasons to come," I replied. "I guess he applied that same principle to everything else too." The next morning I stood in the old barn, looking at the hidden panel that had started it all. Sarah had thought the land was worthless because she could only see its immediate value. She never understood that true worth isn't always visible on the surface. Sometimes you have to dig deeper, be patient, and trust in plans that take years to unfold. Grandpa's last lesson hadn't just been about protecting the farm. It had been about the importance of playing the long game, about using people's own nature against them, and about the power of careful planning and perfect timing. As I walked back to the house, I passed the old oak tree where Grandpa and I used to sit during our lessons. A new generation of children now sat there during farm tours, learning about agriculture, sustainability, and the importance of preserving our agricultural heritage. Sarah had wanted to build a legacy of concrete and steel. Instead, she'd helped cement a different kind of legacy, one of wisdom, patience, and respect for the land. Sometimes I thought the best victories are the ones your opponents never see coming until it's too late. The farm continues to thrive, a living testament to my grandfather's vision and cunning. And somewhere I like to think he's watching with that familiar twinkle in his eye, pleased that his final lesson was so well learned.